All right, guys, welcome back to the Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, TrevorBello, and I am here with my guest, Hobbyist, the Hobbyist Miner. How you doing today, brother?
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we're definitely looking forward to this. As many in my audience know, I am a Bitcoin maximalist, and you, I would say, probably aren't a complete Bitcoin maxi. Maybe I'm wrong, but either way, you do dive into some of the altcoins, the different crypto coins, and your mining. And I think this will just be an interesting conversation to have because we can get your points, some of your beliefs, and your values as to why you do that, and then maybe dive into your strategies, have a little bit of
Perfect.
debate between the two. Uh, but I mean, I guess before that, I think where I'd like to start this episode off is just giving my audience kind of a little background information on who Hobbyist is. What's your professional background and how did you come into Bitcoin? We'll start with Bitcoin.
Perfect. Perfect. Love it. Love it. So, yes. So, I actually stepped into even knowing what crypto was and was probably back in 2017-ish. Was at ish because it's like I don't really have a great timestamp, but right around that time period is when I'm in the tech space. I have been for over 20 years now. And at that time, I stumbled across a website called MinerGate. MinerGate, as terrible as that site and the company ended up being, was definitely ahead of its time. And what interests me about it and how that stepped me into the crypto mining and Bitcoin world was it allowed you to take an application installed on your computer. Now, this was back in 2017, installed on your computer, and it would utilize your CPU and your GPU, and it would profit kind of balance out, swapping, they call it, algorithm swapping, in order to find out what was the most profitable at that moment. And it would mine that on your CPU and GPU, and then it would add it to your account and it would add it as like a balance on their site. And then you could, withdraw it as you needed to. And I didn't know what I didn't know. I tested it out on one computer and it I ended up getting some bunch of these cryptos that I had no clue what they were. Like knew nothing. Like was just so fresh. And I was like, all right, I bought 19 more HP desktop computers. Didn't know what I didn't know then. Ran them in my basement for about 3 months, and I wasn't rich in 3 months. And so I was like, all right, this is stupid. I'm out. I sold the PCs for like 75 bucks each, and I moved on with my day. And as time came on, being in the tech space, the word Bitcoin came up time and time again. And finally, I would say back during the beginning of the last bull run is when I kind of decided to jump back into this world, knowing Bitcoin, learning about it, hearing about it. But that was kind of how I actually stepped into, let alone crypto, with Bitcoin as well.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. I like the background on that because it does help kind of explain how you came into it, how you found
Hmm.
Bitcoin. I always like to start the episodes off this way because it gives us a
Hmm.
good baseline. So, my next kind of question, the topic that I want to dive into is what was like that catalyst that got you,
Mm.
you understand mining or you see Bitcoin, you maybe are starting to understand how the mining process works, but what was that catalyst that got you into mining any cryptocurrency back in what was it, 2020, 2019 era?
Yeah, so at that time, I decided to step back. I decided to step really into crypto at that point. I wanted to make a YouTube channel. Crypto mining, was really starting to buzzy. We'll put it at that. It was starting to become buzzy among the tech space, and so I decided, hey, I'm going to create a YouTube channel, and I know nothing, and I was like, I'm going to document it, and hope that like others can value from seeing someone else learn along the way. And that's when I absolutely, started the YouTube channel. I started home crypto mining, getting into GPU mining, because that was like I couldn't really afford much. Like my first GPU was $100, and I barely could afford like to expense that. And that's actually where I started. But I would say for me, what really hooked me in was actually that first, and this could apply to Bitcoin as well, because as we jump ahead, but for me, the biggest catalyst for me was when I first received my first payout, the first payout of that funny money, this cryptocurrency that like nobody really believed. And as soon as I received that first payout with like a machine I built in my basement, something I ran in the basement, I actually started with Raven coin, was the actual coin I started with on GPU mining, which has been around for years. and I received that first payment, and it hooked me. And I've heard that from a number of people along my journey. That like that was the same thing. Like it was hard to believe until they did it, and then once they did it, it was like, holy cow, this is legitimate. And then everything just took off from there. And now we're 5 years later, and where I am today.
So is it safe to say that like your Bitcoin journey, your crypto journey kind of
Mhm,
all started with mining in a sense? Because I
mhm,
mean, you tell the story of like when you were in tech and you started mining off your
mhm,
computers, then had to sell
mhm,
all those. I guess they're kind of like one and the same, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. For me, that's where my journey began. Was like I was, Bitcoin was buzzy, but it was very much like unobtainable at that point with like GPU mining rigs and such. So for me, my stepping stone into crypto mining was very much GPU mining. I did GPU mining for years when I first got started. I only got my first ASIC maybe 2.5 years ago. My first Bitcoin miner, full size Bitmain Antminer S19J Pro 100 terahash model was then. So my entire journey before that was altcoin mining, and especially more specifically GPU mining.
Okay. Yeah, no, that helps. And I okay, I wanted to do this a different way, but now I'm going to change my mind a little bit. I'm going to switch up
Just do
order
it.
of the questions. So, your experience GPU mining with other cryptocurrencies and
Mhm,
then like doing that first and then mining Bitcoin second,
mhm,
what are the pros and cons of each? Like
mhm,
what is your strategy when you mine,
mhm,
say Solana or maybe
mhm,
I'm or Dogecoin versus Bitcoin?
mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Great question. So back then, I was into GPU mining because Ethereum was super profitable. So it definitely made sense. Ethereum was proof of work versus its proof of stake now. So you can't mine it anymore. But then it was very profitable. Anything you powered on last bull run that was a GPU, you could go ahead and it was profitable. It was great. I mean, you could earn a great profitability from any card. And I was very big. I didn't have much money, so then I was really mining with what they're called 4 GB cards, which was older cards out there, not like the latest and greatest models out there. But I did get by. And then as time went on, GPU mining, after Ethereum went to proof of stake and you couldn't mine it anymore, there was a massive time period. And that was really during that bear market that we experienced just in the entire crypto scene, where I really needed to start to look at like, okay, I need to pivot my hardware focus. My channel was well established. Financially, I was much more well off than where I was previously. And now I could start focusing on purchasing ASICs, and running ASICs was my big one. More specifically, getting into my first Bitcoin ASIC and then starting to look at altcoins. And my mindset back then was very different than where we are now. Back then, I was like, I'm going to mine everything and hodl it. I'm going to mine. So I had like so many different crypto wallets of all these different altcoins, and they just sat. And I was in this mindset of, I'm just going to hold them until they 100x and then sell them. And then, what was I going to do with them? I was going to sell them. But my mindset has always been, and this will really tie things together, where my mindset has always been to sell that altcoin and roll it into Bitcoin. So I've done that over the last 5 years. That's always been kind of where my mind has been. Where after I got through that terrible time period of like, I'm going to hold everything, which you got to take profits eventually. Like you can't just sit on it. I rolled a lot into Bitcoin, and I continue to today as part of my portfolio allocation with a lot of my ASIC miners.
Mhm. So I mean, you kind of covered my other question. My next question was just like with the ability to have the hindsight, looking
Mhm,
back 5 years. Is there something major that you would have done differently other
mhm,
than just not hodling?
mhm. Yeah, I mean, the hard part is like knowing what I know now, I probably wouldn't have gone as deep down the rabbit hole of GPU mining because I spent a ton of money on graphics cards, and like all of a sudden after Ethereum really wasn't mineable anymore. I mean, that was the hard part is like as a GPU miner, you were locked into that one coin. And that was really where your focus was. And when that went to proof of stake and it wasn't mineable anymore, it was like, okay, what do I do with all this hardware? And that's a benefit of GPU mining is you can pivot to boatloads of different algorithms out there. But the downside was like, man, I spent a ton of capital in building out my GPU mining farm. I mean, as a home miner, I had about 100 graphics cards,
Hmm.
which isn't a lot to like these massive farms out there, but was substantial at the end of the day. And Yeah, so looking back, and what I love to tell people too when they're first getting into mining is knowing what I know now, diversifying my crypto mining rigs, whether it's GPU, CPU, ASICs, FPGA miners, diversifying across the board is very important. Don't pigeonhole yourself into just one type of crypto miner.
Okay, see, we can agree to disagree on that. But again, I'm the Bitcoin maximalist, so I
Yep.
throughout this entire episode, I'm gonna say just mine Bitcoin. But
Mhm.
there's the reason why I wanted to have you on is because you are a crypto miner, like you're
Mhm.
not pigeonholing yourself into Bitcoin. You might have a different perspective.
Mhm.
You might also have different beliefs, and maybe those are profit driven motives and not
Mhm.
necessarily idealistic. My motives
Mhm.
are idealistic.
Got you.
I believe in the ethos of Bitcoin, protecting and securing the network, and we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, I think this is going to be a great conversation to have, and it's really good to get your background and your understanding, your philosophy on it. So, what coins are you mining today? Like,
Okay.
are you doing 4, 5, 20? What are you mining?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So over the years, I've definitely pivoted over to more ASIC mining now. That's something that I focused on over the throughout the bear market. Took advantage of it. I have two home sheds. I have a home shed here and one at my electrician's house that are fully wired up commercial services, and then I have a number of units that are hosted at hosting companies. And so I have a variety. So I have mostly Bitcoin ASICs that I'm running, Dogecoin or script. For those that aren't familiar with what script is, I have a lot of Caspa as well, Caspa ASICs, and then I got a trickle of a few other odd and ends. But I would say over those are pretty much my top three that I'm running. So Bitcoin, script mining, and Caspa miners at this current time, and you know, as I said before, I love that you bring it up. Like looking at you're more coming from the ideological side of Bitcoin mining, and like not even Bitcoin mining, Bitcoin. And you are orange through and through, and I
Yeah.
love it. I absolutely love it. Like I get it, like 100%, like nothing against it. And I'm glad you bring that up. Where like my side of the world comes from the mining side. So with mining as being my first introduction to everything really comes down to profit. Like for me, like I'm looking at profit. So I'm like, okay, like when I'm looking at this, like what my miners are, I'm like, okay, I have an S21 XP, and let's say that unit's making $12 a day in Bitcoin. Great. After power, $12 a day, awesome. And then we go back, maybe a few months ago when the Bitmain Antminer L9 released. That's a script miner. Traditionally makes Dogecoin and Litecoin. You got $12 a day versus $65 a day. And when I speak with people, I'm like, which one's a bigger number for you? And they're like, okay, well, 65. I'm like, fantastic. I'm like, you don't have to love script mining. You don't have to love Dogecoin, but that's more profitable. And so the nice thing is when I chat with people, I'm like, okay, when we're looking at mining, where do we want to get to? Like, where's the end of that yellow brick road? And that it's more orange, but it's Bitcoin at the end of that road. And so when I chat with people, I'm like, altcoin mining just provides you an alternative method to accumulate Bitcoin faster. And
Mhm.
that's the world we're in. It's like, unfortunately, it's a race. It really is as a miner. It's like to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can. And so a lot of people I talk to love the ability to be able to mine Dogecoin, and then a lot of pools out there will convert it to Bitcoin for you. So that you can select that. You can pick that option, or you could diversify. You could do like 50-50, some Dogecoin, some Bitcoin. The nice thing is having the option to change it up. But with Bitcoin, you're kind of stuck in that rut. So that's kind of where for me, that's why I like to diversify what I'm mining. But I would say top three, get back to your original question, was Bitcoin, Script, and Caspa.
Mhm. I like that you went the direction that you went. So my argument like towards it is, you're mining Doge, but you don't
Mhm.
believe in the protocol. You
Mhm.
don't believe in the actual algorithm that it's mining. You don't
Mhm.
believe it's going to be something someday. Why, like, other than from a profitability stance,
Mhm.
why waste the energy, your
Mhm.
time, like the physical energy that you're putting through the machine, but also your time and your life force trying to
Mhm.
understand it enough to make it work.
Yeah, great question. So, if I was if I was not into mining, if I wasn't, and I think the tech side of my world like connects me to that mining side, as where why I get into that. if I was not into that, and I was just stepping into this to, hey, I just want to accumulate Bitcoin, I would just buy Bitcoin. Like I would have no interest in going into the mining side, and I would just DCA into Bitcoin every week, and great, I would just continue to accumulate Bitcoin. However, because I'm a crypto miner, I like to tell people at the basic level, all we're doing is trading electricity for crypto.
Mhm.
Like at the basic level, that's what mining is. Like you have a good electric rate, yeah, or you find a good electric rate, you buy a miner, and every day you're DCAing into that. And you're not wrong in the statement that traditionally crypto miners are in it for profit, 100%. I mean, and the reason is, I think that I would say is because of the capital that is put out up front. That's naturally where we go to is like, okay, well, I bought this ASIC, it was $17,000. My first thought is not like, oh, fantastic, I'm securing the blockchain and the network. My first thought is like, how do I ROI on this unit? Or like, what am I earning on this unit? And I mean, I mean, it's interesting because as a miner, you you even said it. You're like, man, you're not passionate about the project, you're not knee deep in it. And it's true. It's absolutely true. I mean, at the end of the day, as a miner, you're more interested in accumulating that coin. What's my profitability per day? Am I breaking even when it comes down to my electric rate? How can I find a better electric rate? That's really the world that we live in. And it's interesting, but I also think it's also showing the evolution of the crypto space where you have these niches, right? You have someone like yourself that is like, "Hey, I'm a Bitcoin maxi," and I'm like, "Dude, love it, Bitcoin all the way. Like, love to see it." But it's like I'm just taking alternative avenues to get there versus just straight up purchasing.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely see your point, especially from a business standpoint. I mean, a
Hmm.
business is in business because they want to make money, they want to profit.
Hmm.
And as an individual, you got bills to pay. And when your miner is $17,000, like your bottom line is getting that $17,000
Yep.
back so that you can start to profit from there. So I totally understand. I think this is one of the biggest things that has held me back from getting into
Hmm.
heavy duty mining, just simply because of the cost of the infrastructure acquisition cost.
Hmm.
That's such a huge hurdle to overcome. And because Bitcoin plays out the way that Bitcoin does, every 4 years, your revenues are getting cut in
Hmm.
half. And so you have to find more. If you're going to be idealistic like me, you have to find more and more creative ways, which we'll get into a little bit later. But you have to find more creative ways to make that Bitcoin go further and make your electricity costs either flatline or dip lower. So I see your point and I understand why. And again, I'm not knocking what you're doing. It's not what I would do. And my
Sure.
advice to anybody who's watching this is, figure out your own path that aligns with
Mhm.
like your values and your beliefs and do what's right for you. Don't ever just take what I'm saying, as gospel because I'm retarded. But at the end
So
of the
I want to jump in and ask real quick for you. Are
yeah.
you mining Bitcoin in any way, or are
Yes,
you just
absolutely.
okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I've got my bit axes, I've got them all around
Okay.
the room. I've got a Canaan Avalon miner back there, but
Okay.
I also do heat reuse, and that's something that I want to get into.
Mm.
I mean, I guess we could probably just get into it now. Uh,
Yeah, tell me about it.
so I do heat reuse, and I know you're up in Pennsylvania, so I know it gets a
Mhm.
little bit colder, during the time
Mhm.
of year when it's winter time. But what I've tried to do is going back to this idea of finding more ways to mine Bitcoin that are strategically advantageous to, me and my
Mhm.
idealistic passions.
Mhm.
Um, it's like, how can I implement a Bitcoin miner into something that already exists?
Mhm.
If I'm using a heater to heat my home, I'm already expending a certain amount of electricity every month to do that. Could I implement a Bitcoin miner to consume that electricity and produce that heat and then collect the
Mhm.
Bitcoin as a byproduct? And that's
Mhm.
kind of where I've fallen into mining is I only mine Bitcoin, but most of the time my Bitcoin mining is done during the heating season. So when I need
Mhm.
heat, I turn on a switch, flips the Bitcoin miner on, the Bitcoin miner creates heat, sends it into the room, and I collect Bitcoin on the back end. And that's kind of my mining situation. Have you thought about this? Have you done anything
Mhm.
like this before, or Is this the first
Yeah,
time you're
no,
hearing about it?
definitely love it. Yeah, so I utilize a lot of smaller miners or quiet miners throughout my house during the winter time, just like you do, as you said. Some of them are altcoin miners, some of them are Bitcoin miners that are designed for home mining. So they're quiet, so they're
Yeah.
not like a traditional ASIC, and they're placed strategically. And some of them use, several hundred watts, without a doubt, versus just a few hundred watts here and there. But yeah, I got one. I always put one in the kitchen. I got one in the basement. I got one upstairs. I mean, I got them all over the place as well. It's a great avenue to repurpose them. Lucky for me, like when it hits spring and summer, I do have a shed here that I move those items to, because just to get rid of that heat, in that regard. But no, I think it's a fantastic use. It's really funny you bring that up, because more and more, so I have the ability to travel to a lot of these mining conventions and stuff. I was just recently at Mining Disrupt, down in Fort Lauderdale. I know this one was in Miami, but they what you're really pointing to is the evolution of Bitcoin mining into other things other than direct like air heat. What is starting to become more and more popular is tapping it into hydro. Bitmain has an ant rack unit that is becoming more and more popular with hotels, where it hydro loops through the hotel water, heats it, and then pumps it back into pools or spas or whatever, and that's becoming more and more popular. So, kind of like what you're saying about repurposing that heat in order to have another byproduct of it. I do agree with you. It's interesting the avenue we're going, where more and more trying to fit it into everyday life, so that it's in more and more daily appliances and devices and such.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the from an idealistic perspective, my goal is to mine more Bitcoin, but do
Hmm.
it in a way that is like synergistic with my
Hmm.
current life existing as it
Hmm.
is. And so you mentioned mining Disrupt. I was down there as well. I just got back from the Undermine Heat Punk Summit, which was an incredible
Oh,
event.
cool.
So I'm heavily involved in the heat punk scene. So,
Hmm.
finding these creative ways to generate heat with a Bitcoin miner. Um, but what's so cool is that like there are not just like personal use cases, there's business use cases as well. The way we see it is anytime that you need heat and electric heating infrastructure is used, you can swap that infrastructure out for smart infrastructure, i.e. Bitcoin,
Mm.
and use a Bitcoin miner. And whether that's hydro, immersion, or air cooled, you can generate that heat. And we actually call Bitcoin the byproduct, because heat is the product. Bitcoin just
Correct.
happen, you just collect that Bitcoin on the back end. And when you have a hodler's mentality, okay, let me reframe this a little bit. So large industrial pubcos, when they mine
Hmm.
Bitcoin, they have to sell their Bitcoin to pay
Hmm.
for the electricity cost, the infrastructure cost, the rent, the whatever, just to run their business. And what they're left with is a small percentage of fiat most of the time, and that's what they use to bolster their business. Whereas with someone like me in my situation and us heat punks, we're already paying for the heat. The heat is already an expense that we've
Hmm.
calculated into our profit and loss statement. And because we're able to use a Bitcoin miner to generate that heat, now the sats that we're collecting on the back end, we don't have to sell. We can hodl those
Correct.
into infinity, because we're already paying for the heat, we're already paying for the
Hmm.
electricity, we've already paid for the infrastructure. And so it changes the numbers out quite a bit. And because it does that to such a large extent, we can use previous models. Like I can use an S9 to heat my house if I wanted to. It's not as profitable. It costs more in electricity, but an
Hmm.
S9 costs $50 versus
Yep.
S19 that costs 500.
Hmm. Yeah, no, it's cure something I wanted to go back on, of just repurposing that heat. So at my ASIC shed, which is at my electrician's property, right next to the shed is actually a hen house and a chicken coop. And so we use the exhaust heat to heat the chicken coop, and also the chicken and the pheasant area during the winters here in Pennsylvania, and the fall. So like that entire area, it's so funny. Like that entire area, there's no snow, it's just green grass, like right in the middle of like winter time in the snow, because you got 30 ASICs, blowing air across that entire property area. So yeah, it worked out really, really well. And even in the hen house, like the hen house traditionally would have to have like a heater in there. But because of the fact of the way we designed it, the ASICs pump that heat right into that to keep the hen house warm and everything. And then he collects the eggs, and then resells the eggs and eats the eggs himself and stuff. So like it's a whole circle. It's definitely
It's
a
a
whole
virtuous
circle.
cycle, absolutely.
Yep.
And
Yep.
what people I love that you bring this up, because what people don't realize, if they're not, homesteading, if they're not growing their
Mhm.
own food, they don't realize the cost it requires to
Mhm.
maintain that healthy living environment or growing
Mhm.
environment for your plants, for your animals. If you throw a chicken out into the cold, like, they might live, they might survive, but are they gonna lay eggs? Are they gonna
Sure, sure.
grow super healthy? Like, if you're providing that heat, you're going to be able to give them a better, healthier environment, which they grow more, they lay more eggs, they grow healthier and more robust.
Mhm.
And when you have to pay for that heat, that is it pulls out of your bottom line, really. So
Yeah.
with Bitcoin mining, it's just like this ability, and you probably use other ASICs too, like you said. So
Mhm.
it really helps bolster that top end revenue when you're thinking about it that way. And I really enjoy the heat punk industry, the
Mhm.
movement that we've kind of started. I wouldn't say created, we kind of just hopped onto it and started building really cool stuff. So
Yeah, I actually have more and more, like, I'm always looking now. My biggest challenge is like power, like getting more power. And so something I've started to look at is where I'm located in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of greenhouses. And so I've started connecting part of my one of the things I've started to look at is connecting with them to substitute out, like, oh, do you have an old heat source for your greenhouse that's going? Like, how about we talk about, putting a Bitcoin miner in there and providing heat for your greenhouse, and figuring out an agreement with power costs and such, versus them actually paying for all that heat. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you that heat regardless. You know what I mean? You might as well earn some Bitcoin while you're at it. So that's definitely something where, like, repurposing that and finding avenues for that. It's interesting because I think that world has been around for a long time, of just repurposing that heat. I think it's just becoming more and more popular. And I think communities are just sharing, creative ways. Cause I mean, I see people all the time amongst my communities that are taking full size ASICs, and they're mounting them to a wall next to their furnace and tapping into their returns, and they're just pumping those in. Like, I love it. Like, I think it's great. I mean, it stinks during like the spring and summer because you have to find an alternative method to keep mining if you want to keep mining. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I think it's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, it goes back to the computer days, like the not computer days, like gamers, they would build their own, like, gaming PC, and it's this big huge tower with a bunch of fans on it, and it produces a lot of heat. And I mean, anytime you walk into one of their rooms, there's a ton of heat being generated. That room is probably like 75, 80 degrees.
Yep.
And so we're just kind of creating a new industry, because Bitcoin, as the nature of Bitcoin goes, every 4 years, you have to be twice as efficient just in order to stay in the same place. So
Yeah.
where can we find those efficiencies, and how can we at the end of the day have more Bitcoin than we did yesterday? And I think
Hmm.
that mindset for Bitcoiners, for miners, especially who are only mining Bitcoin, that mindset is what's driving us to do what we're doing. And I do a home mining spaces with
Hmm.
my buddy Two Sats every other week,
Oh, nice.
and one thing that we're just trying to help people understand the decentralized nature of Bitcoin mining, and
Mhm.
how a million miners spread all across the globe with 1 terahash of mining equipment
Hmm.
adds up to quite a lot. It may
Hmm.
not seem like that when you're looking at, like, oh, I only have one bitaxe, or I have three bitaxes,
Hmm.
but you extrapolate that out to a million of them, and they hold a significant value in the network because they're decentralized, they're ungovernable, they're uncontrollable. And when you bolster that with the nodes management as well, I mean, it makes Bitcoin unstoppable.
Hmm.
Even if, let's say, you have Mara and Iron and Riot mining, a third of the Bitcoin network, if the government comes in and shuts them down for some reason whatsoever, we still have a million of these home miners
Yep.
out there they can't be controlled. And that's why
Yeah.
I like the heat reuse industry too, because we've just taken what the home miners have done and we found a way to get 100 terahash instead of 1 terahash.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious on, and the reason I bring this up because like this is something that I ran into was you had mentioned before of like, hey, you're okay with like paying out the electric and to go because you're already heating the home and you're just gonna go ahead and stack that Bitcoin. Like that's the mindset you have. A question for you I have, because I've run into this in the past. I'm just always curious in other people's situations. At what level of your electric bill do you get to before that's not sustainable? Because I know where I was at versus, and that's why I'm curious on like, hey, you're mining, you are mining and you're getting that heat through there, but I'm very curious on like what that is because the reason I say that is I was in that exact situation with mining of like, hey, I am not going to sell any crypto or let alone Bitcoin, and I'm just going to pay that electric bill. And then all of a sudden, time turns into like, holy cow, my electric bill's $1,000 a month, and I'm paying that out of my pocket.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm very curious on your side of things.
Yeah, so I have one miner. I don't have
Okay,
I don't have 20
sure.
miners.
Okay.
My electric bill as of right now, because of where we are right now,
Hmm.
um, my machine, I'm running an S19 J Pro, or K Pro, so it's a
Okay,
$1,000
pro. Okay.
unit, 120 terahash, and my electric bill has not changed.
Hmm.
So in the wintertime, like my average electric bill is, $120. In the
Hmm.
wintertime, that goes up to like $160 to heat the house.
Yep.
In the wintertime now, I'm using the S19K, and
Mhm.
my electric bill, I think the highest bill I saw was 170
Okay.
in the cold of winter. So right now nothing has changed other than the fact
Mhm.
that I had to drop, $2,200 to actually buy the machine and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
infrastructure to build it. So we'll set all that stuff to the side. When I would stop mining for
Mhm.
heat is probably when my electric bill goes up 25%. Because that,
Okay. So a
that's
substantial difference there, yeah.
yeah, a
Okay.
substantial difference. I'm willing to weather a little bit of like
Mhm.
increase because I know that my miner is helping to decentralize the Bitcoin network. I'm
Mhm.
helping again, ideological perspective.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know
Yep.
that I know that I'm securing the network, I'm helping to decentralize hash rate, and I'm also benefiting from the heat. So it's kind of a win-win situation. But then that third
Mhm.
and final piece is that because I am hodling into infinity, I'm never
Mhm.
selling those coins for fiat. As long as I hold on to them, I don't trade them for anything. I don't buy
Mhm.
goods and services with them. On average, they're going up 100%
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
every 4
definitely,
years,
definitely.
So if I look back with hindsight, the sats that I mined on in this time frame versus the electricity rate that I made more on the sats than I paid
Mhm.
in electricity. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, I was just very curious because, like, I get it, like, I started out mining with, like, a few small home miners and, like, that electric billing, not a big deal, not a big deal, and then all of a sudden you turn around one day and you're like, "Holy cow," like, this is so, like, that's so expensive. So, I was very curious on just kinda where that was for you on just, like, where that threshold is where it's like, "Okay, where does it make sense not to have it on?" Because there is that threshold between, the heat that it provides and then too much heat, and like, okay, now I have too much heat. I can't repurpose it. I need to extinguish it outside. And now it's lost heat, which is as you had
Mhm.
talked about, and how much you're actually paying for that electric. So that's what I was just curious on that.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate the question. And honestly, I only mine when that heat is required. So my miner shut off. I probably only have like a 10% uptime. Um, and
Okay.
right now it's the middle. We're heading into summertime,
Hmm.
so there's no need for the heat. My miners have been
Yeah.
off for a month and a half.
Mhm.
So there's definitely a drawback because hey, like I'm not mining, I'm not doing anything, but I'm also not spending the electricity. I
Hmm.
wasn't gonna use the heat in the summertime anyways, so I'm not using the miner in the summertime. So it drastically reduces my ROI on equipment. But if I paid $2,200 for my mining infrastructure, and let's say last summer or last winter I mined $350 at that time in sats. What is that? That's I mined like 400,000 sats roughly. As long as I just hold those for another 4 years, then I've ROI'd whether I keep
Oh
the
yeah.
miners running or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one thing. That's kind of, again, that's, I look at it from an ideological perspective, not a profit incentive. I'm not trying to sell my Bitcoin for fiat at that time. And so I'm just, I mean, at this point now I'm just trying to figure out how can I get more hash rate in the house
Yeah.
in a way that I can utilize it during the summertime. So like the next project for me is a Bitcoin powered water heater, because I always
Oh,
want
nice.
water. So that's the next one for me on my list.
That'll be very cool. Last question I'll ask you. I know we're
Okay,
going
no,
back
you're
and
good.
forth, but
It's back and it's fine.
on your S19K Pro, how are you running that in a home setup? Because I know everyone comes up with creative avenues for sound, or how are you piping your heat? Give me the rundown. I'm very
Yes.
curious.
So you are running, and I got this idea from you because you ran it.
Uh-oh.
You've got the AC Infinities hooked up to
Yep.
the Nord boards on your ASIC
Mhm.
miners. So I utilized that fan setup. And then I had a
Okay.
buddy, Antoine or Twan
Mhm.
from 256 Heat, based up in Ontario. He helped me design the system. So
Okay.
Um, just a little. So I live in a small manufactured home. It's about
Mhm.
800 square feet. And the
Okay.
central heating unit, the way that it works is it's in the middle of the home and it pushes heat down through the floors through this plenum. Um,
Okay.
I cut that out completely because where I live on the Oregon coast, if you don't seal your house up entirely, you get rodents. Rodents will infest
Wow.
everything.
Okay.
So when I moved into the home, rodents had already infested the HVAC plenum. And so every
Okay.
time you turn that plenum on or you turn that heater on, it would shove that air through the house and it'd smell heavy
Mm.
of rodents.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought process was two birds, one stone. Let's kill that completely. So, I mean, all the infrastructure is still there. But what I did is where the heater sits, there's a cavity in my house. And
Okay.
it's about 6 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. So I took the K Pro, took some Nakamoto fan shrouds, bolted it to a wall,
Mm-hmm.
then took the IX Tech, the X Tech Solutions filter, put that on the
Mm-hmm.
bottom of
Yep.
the AC Infinity fan, and so it goes filter, AC Infinity fan, and then from the top of the K Pro, it's got these shrouds that come out,
Mhm.
and so it goes to the wall. One side goes down the hall this direction, one side goes down the hall this direction. They're kind of like ducted this way. And so you don't ever see the miner. And because I'm using that AC
Mhm.
Infinity fan on like 55%, it's not
Okay.
any louder than my HVAC was originally. And
Mhm.
this is a big thing. A lot of people in my audience will know. I'm sure a lot of people in your audience will know this as well. When you plug in a Bitcoin miner, it does two things. It gets really loud and it gets really hot. So you have
Yep.
to figure out, especially like if you're a single man, you can just
Mhm.
let those things whir and like not give
Yep.
two shits. But when you're
Yep.
married like me and like yourself, you have to worry about, is my wife going to hear this? Because if she hears it, I'm going to hear it. And I'm not going to
Oh
hear the
yeah.
Bitcoin
Oh yeah.
miner. I'm going to hear her. So
Yep.
I call that the wife approval, wife acceptance factor. And
Love it.
that was the biggest thing. Like the biggest thing was the noise. And the second biggest thing was the she didn't want to see it, so I had to
Mhm.
figure out a way to hide it and then also be able to like mitigate that noise. And so I took a couple pages out of your book and then some other things that some other Bitcoin miners taught me.
Mhm.
And now it just sits up in there. I'll actually have to clean it out here in like the next month or so, just before October comes around. I just got to clean
Yeah.
out the ASIC real quick, pull the boards out. But that's basically how it works. What's really cool is it's run. So it's bang, bang on off. And the miner automatically turns itself on when the heat threshold in my house dips
Mm.
below 65 degrees. So it'll kick on at 65 degrees, it'll run to 71 degrees and then shut off. And
That's awesome.
it does that through a Wi-Fi PDU switch that Twan built.
Mm.
It's his design, and it's through a home like Wi-Fi
Mhm.
sensor setup. So
Yeah.
there's like a bunch of
Yep.
temperature sensors in my house, and when the temperature drops below those thresholds, it turns on.
Turns on that PDU spot, which is awesome. That's great. No, that's very, very cool. I mean, I love And man, the AC Infinity inline fans have become super popular over the last few years, and yeah, I love them. I mean, I got 30 of them in my shed alone, and they work fantastic. So yeah, I was just very curious on how you were doing that because everyone has all different avenues. I mean, I've seen some people run coolers and put their miners in the coolers to keep them quiet and do it up. I've seen all different really cool avenues that people have gone in garages and all different things. So that's why I was very curious on how you were running the S19K
Yeah.
Pro inside, which is great.
I think it's so cool, to your point, all these people doing crazy things trying to
Hmm.
mitigate the sound and mitigate the heat in some way, shape, or form. This is something that I find so extraordinary about the Bitcoin mining, crypto mining industry as a whole. You have all of these, au- autistic ish people who are really curious or really excited about this technology. It's also printing money, but now we're finding creative ways to tinker and dabble and mess around, and everybody kind of does their own thing. Some
Hmm.
people, I literally know people who are taking hash boards, dumping them in canola oil because it's dielectric fluid at the end of the day,
Yep.
dumping them in canola oil and using that canola, like that process, to heat tree sap to make
Wow.
syrup. You know what I mean? And it doesn't look pretty. It's not like the most effective or efficient, but it works, and it was cheap. And you extrapolate that out to hundreds of people doing crazy things, and we get people who are building products around this, people who are just trying to do something to make their living situation better because they want to mine crypto and they don't want to piss their wife
Hmm.
off. And then you have people like yourself. You built dedicated mining sheds so that you could mine these cryptos. And that was kind of a question I wanted to get into, and we passed over it and went into the heat reuse. But we'll come back because I'm curious,
Love
like,
it.
what was that thing that got you to start building or deciding where to build your mining shed? I know that you said you have one with your electrician buddy.
Mhm.
Great opportunity for you. But like, what was that catalyst, that decision that was like, oh, I need to get these out of the house and into a dedicated shed?
Yeah. So during COVID, I was finishing my basement. It took forever. I was like, I'm gonna do it myself, and that's not my world. But I was like, I'm gonna do it. So I decided to try to build a mining room in my basement, a small little closet area, and like I doubled up on the insulation in there, foam board, and I intake and exhausted air, and it was a complete flop. Like did not work out. I tried a million different ways, spent a ton of money on it, but I was running about 100 graphics cards in there, and the heat that I was producing was so hot. My furnace was struggling with the inside of the house because I was pulling in air from outside in there during the middle of the summer into that room because I needed fresh air. And then I was exhausting the hot air in that room. And theoretically, you think that would work great, right? You're like, oh, why not? Like it worked great. But because of that pressure that I was creating in my basement, it ended up killing my furnace. So I killed my furnace and my AC unit all in one summer. And then the wife was like, "We got to do something here. Like, we just spent $8,000 to replace our AC unit. We're not keeping miners in the house, and it's all at scale. You eventually just break that that layer of scale, and your scalability it's too big, and you try to make it work. And that's the one. I mean, home miners, man, we try to make things work the best we can. We scale up, we do whatever garage. So at that point, it was like, okay, I agree. Like this isn't going to work. I have no plans of descaling, and so I was like, let me get a small shed out back. So this was like it was during COVID time period, um, and bought a shed locally, a small little they call it a lean-to style shed, and put it right in my backyard here. I wired up 150 amps off of my main panel right into it, and I mined in there. And even then, I even had a full size ASIC in there, but it was mostly GPU rigs and stuff. And I live in a traditional neighborhood, suburban neighborhood, so it didn't work very well long term for a lot of this louder stuff that just like, man, it just felt bad for my neighbors, and like they haven't complained yet, but I know they will. So at that point, when I started to leverage into full size ASICs, was when I was like, I need an alternative. Like I can run your small stuff in here and like some smaller rigs in here, but like the bigger stuff, I need some other options. So I would say about 2 years ago, is when my electrician, believe it or not, the electrician that was coming over to do my electrical work, he came over the first time into that room. That room had 90 amps wired into it originally that my electrician wired in. And I was like, this is my like what I want to do. And I showed him and everything like that. And he's younger than me, but not super young. And he was like, listen, I won't charge you anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a huge savings for me. He's like, but just teach me about crypto. And I was like, hell yeah, like barter system, let's go. And
Deal.
so we did that room. We taught him about it, got him into like his first little miner. Then we went out to my shed and he helped wire out to the shed. And I try to do everything myself first. And then when like it all fails, I'm like, okay, let's get a professional in here to do it right. And then after that, when we were gonna do, I was talking with him. He's a single guy. He lives right on the outskirts of a farm and a nursery. So like he doesn't really have any neighbors. He had the chickens and everything. And I was chatting with him, and I was like, "Hey, can I pay you and put a shed on your property and like tap into your houses?" Like he's a single guy, never home, and he was like, "Dude, I have an old shed here." It was a 12 by 12 old A-frame shed. It had like his riding mower in it and like just junk, packed full of junk. You go back on my channel, you can see I have a 45-minute video from start to finish of like 10 days start to finish on this thing. And so I gutted it. I we dug a trench up to his house, and we wired into his house, and we pulled 100 amps from it. And I ran the whole kit and caboodle, the whole setup for about a year, and then I got greedy and I wanted more power. So I actually brought in a 400 amp dedicated commercial service right off of the pole and transformer, and went through that whole deal. So yeah, I definitely went from like small home mining shed, okay, a shed with 100 amps to now 400 amps, and I'm already talking about building a second shed on his property to bring in another 400 amps as well. So
Oh man.
it's been wild.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. What's your power rate up there?
So I am thrilled you ask. I just actually recently I've struggled with power rates in Pennsylvania for a while. Short story, when I first started mining, I found a power supplier. We have suppliers in Pennsylvania where they look at your usage and then you can lock in a year for unlimited power. And I was able to do that for $100 a month. Like they didn't look at like the mining. They didn't see the mining yet. So I locked that in for my first year here. And so I abused the heck out of it. And then
Sure.
when we went to his property, he hadn't ever had anything at it. So when I built this whole thing out, I tapped into his panel for 100 amps. We did the same thing again. So I was paying like $300 and using like 100 amps all the time of power. It was abused the heck out of it the best I could. Jump ahead. Reality is now those programs they don't exist anymore. It's probably because I abused them. And so I ran at my shed with a 400 amp dedicated service. I had to run for 1 year. You can't really negotiate any rates without 1 year of history.
Mhm.
And I went ahead and ran it there, and I actually had some great opportunities. I was under 9 cents for the longest time, and that worked out well. And then since I have a year under my belt, I stepped up, reached out to about 30 different power suppliers, had meetings with them, load letters. So I just locked in 2 weeks ago for a 3-year contract at 7.2.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that is like a lot of so I'm in a regulated power market. You're in a
Hmm.
deregulated market. So you have
Yep.
the ability to choose between providers and it gives you a little bit
Hmm.
more leeway. But even still, I mean, 7.2, I mean, that's not terrible. It's not the best, but that's not
Exactly.
it's not bad. What was the experience like getting that 400 amp dedicated commercial service? That's a big hurdle that a lot of
Wild.
people have to overcome.
Yeah, it was definitely wild for sure because like as I said, like I just kind of like stepped into this. I'm not in the trade. I don't have that experience there. So for me, it was very much like first step for me was reaching out and talking to the power company and it being like, what do I need to do? And they're like, well, you got to put in a work order. We have to have an engineer come out, walk the property with you and kind of tell him what you want to do and what you guys are looking to do. Will the transformer support it? Luckily for me, on my electrician's property was one of the utility poles with a transformer. So it was like, man, it was a massive win-win. So telling them what I was doing, I was like, hey, you see that shed back there? I'm like, I want to run 600 amps to it is what I started with. I'm like, I want to get 600 amps to there. And he's like, well, if you do 600 amps in Pennsylvania, you got to do this permit. You have to get this. And I was like, okay, maybe not 600. I'm like, can we go 400? He's like, oh yeah, 400, no problem. You don't have to do any of that. So he's like, great. He's like, what are you doing back in that shed? And I'm like, how about a wood shop? He's like, oh yeah, wood shop. And I'm like, can we put wood shop on paper? He's like, yeah, that's perfect. And he's like, what are you actually doing? And I was like, and so at that time, I didn't want to be like crypto mining. So I just said AI compute. I'm getting into the AI compute industry. You know, everybody wants to be a part of that. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. That sounds good. And so ended up having to go through that. Then like I got this big packet from the power company of like, oh, you have to dig a 3-foot trench. And it was a 160-foot, 3-foot trench. We got a backhoe and like did a lot of this stuff ourselves, like dug this trench, put down this, and there's a quarry nearby. So we got dump trucks of cinder to fill the bottom of it. We went ahead and ordered in. We had to order in from had to come in freight from Ohio, the actual cable. I think it's like something, don't quote me, I think it's like 6662 or something like that. It's a really thick cable to run all the way from the transformer. We had to put it through conduit, bring it up. It had to be certain depths. It was an absolute crazy experience. Like ordering in a 400 amp meter base. The lucky thing for me is like I had an electrician that did this day to day for by trade. So like he was there to like, okay, this is the stuff you're gonna need. This is what you're gonna do. So I was like, great, let's order it all. He installed it all. We ran everything inside of the ASIC shed to support, you know, we have 200 amp panels in there with all 30 amp 240 volts. So it was a wild experience. And like I recorded it all. So that's like people love the video. It's a 45-minute long video. And I did 10 days and just day one, here we are. This is what we're doing. Done. Here it is. Day 2, day 3, all the way through. So it's like 10 days total from start to finish between when we started and when we were energized with the power company.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch those videos because I'm super curious to see that process. But so you did this once, and now you're getting ready to do this all again.
Yep. Yep. So one of the big reasons people may ask, like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you going with the commercial rate? Well, the next nice thing is, like, as you had talked about, deregulated versus regulated. In Pennsylvania, I have the delivery side of my electric bill, which is with a company called PPL, and
Mhm.
like that is like at 4.9, like locked in. You can't change that. You can't negotiate it for residential. You can't do anything with that. With commercial, though, it's on a demand charge. So they look at your usage for the month and they pick like one day in time. They do a snapshot of it, and that's what you're charged for. Because I don't have a lot of highs and lows, that's pretty much 500 bucks every month for me. So even though I had to do this upfront capital investment, one, it gets rid of that side to be because they would double charge me. They would charge you for your kilowatt hour on the delivery side and on the supply side for that exact same kilowatt hour. So you would get charged twice. So with this
Mhm.
setup, it's not the case. You only have 500 on one side and then my 7 cents on the other side for my kilowatt hours. So that was my like, okay, I'm going to spend all this money, all this time, all this labor, but long term, it's now opened up the door for me for a lot more opportunity with a lot of that. Well, because I locked in 7 cents, 7.2 for the next 3 years, it now allows me to go, okay, I can invest this capital again to now double the size of my mining because I know for the next 3 years, my electric rate is going to be static. And
Mhm.
that's been really tough for me because I didn't know that. In Pennsylvania, it was like 6 month rate, 12-month rate, 3 month rate. It was all over the place. So that's why I decided, like, hey, I want to keep expanding. I want to keep growing my kind of inventory on my ASIC farm. And so with that, this is kind of the next best thing. Now I'm very experienced in it. So now I kind of know what I need to do and not do.
Mhm. Okay, so I have a ton of questions still, but I want to be cognizant of and respectful of your time. We're about 53 minutes in. Do you still have like 10, 15 minutes?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so I I'm curious what you obviously you're doing this again, so like you have a positive outlook for like your mining operations, but I mean, where are you trying to what's your end goal for this? So what's your goals?
Yeah, so I think for me, the shed has opened up a lot of opportunities for me. So like one, it's great content for the channel. Like no one else is really building out sheds on YouTube for crypto mining. You know, that's kind of been a great thing for me from the content side of the world. Set me apart, help the channel grow. but also from the profit side of the world. Like it's allowed me to profit from these miners, which has been fantastic, which is my income. Go back March 5th actually was my last day. I worked up till March 5th recently, and that was my last day with my employer. And now content creation and crypto mining is my full-time job now. So that being said, yes, you have a lot of upfront cost with miners, but they're profitable and it's worked out really, really well for me. And so for me, it's just at the end of the day, it's chasing more profit. But for me, I am all for diversifying, which anybody will say with like a smart investment, you want to diversify. So for me, that's kind of the route I'm taking.
Mhm. No, that makes complete sense. Looking ahead to the future, we know, I mean, I don't know if it's the same thing for like Doge and Script and other
Hmm.
coins, but with Bitcoin, we know that it's, getting cut in half every 4 years.
Hmm.
So what is your strategy with your machines, as you progress further and further into the future?
Yeah, great question. So something I actually did a video on this maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was things I wish I knew when I first got started with mining. And my mindset I had back when I started versus now is very different from the hardware side of the world. Then I was holding on to hardware too long. I would hold on to it until it was worth zero. And now the world that I live in now is like this is more of a business for me. So it's like I need to make smart moves. So believe it or not, the best time to sell that amazing Bitcoin miner that is extremely profitable is the height of that bull run, is the height of profitability. If you're going to sell it and then buy into the next generation machine, is what I always tell people. So for me, I have become very, and I've run into this very much with Caspa mining, where I have some of the first generation Caspa miners. Those aren't really worth anything anymore. Like they're negative per day. And man, I'm sitting on a few of those, and it's like, dang, what do I do with these? And I've been selling them on eBay and stuff like that, but it's like I could have gotten ahead of this. And so for me, even with my miners I have now, like I still have three S19J Pro 100 terahash models. And they're not even that old when you think about it. But in reality, in the hardware evolution, with all the different models that have come out since the 100 terahash,
Mhm.
those are old. So I have two of those units here at my house actually in immersion. I have a small home fog caching C2 immersion kit here, and they're off because they're just like they're not even close to profitable for me at this given time. They're in immersion, so it's not like I can relocate them easily. So just trying to be smarter with hardware and turn it over. And so gone to me are the days of like, I'm going to hold this for 5 years and I'm going to mine this for 5 years, at least in my situation, with the power being so valuable and like that slot, we'll call it, in my shed being so valuable. It's me like, okay, if I run a miner for 2 years, that's a long time, but reselling it when it's still very profitable and then buying the next generation. And that's kind of the world that I live in, is kind of trying to stay ahead of that.
Mhm. That's a full-time job in and of itself, just trying to stay
Yeah.
ahead of that. So
Yep.
kudos to
And
you. I mean,
expensive. Yeah.
definitely expensive. If you ever need to offload one of those S19s, just let me know. I know some
100%,
people.
100%.
Um, so I mean, let's focus in on Bitcoin, because
Okay.
to be honest, I don't care about any of the other stuff, and so it's my podcast. I'll do what I want.
Love it. Let's do it.
What are your opinions, your thoughts on the state of Bitcoin mining today?
So, Bitcoin mining today is very industrialized. At least if you want to be competitive from the profitability side. As I said, crypto mining world. We have massive farms turning up all the time. I was just at an 8 megawatt, and that's a small farm out in Iowa. I was just there last week filming for a mining farm tour on my channel, and but there are massive farms turning up all the time. And so what happens is like people stepping into the space that are, I always talk to people and they're like, hey, I want to get into Bitcoin mining. I'm like, awesome, love it. Why Bitcoin mining? Well, I want to accumulate Bitcoin. Love it. Okay, cool. We're checking all the boxes here. Why a Bitcoin miner? Well, I thought I needed a Bitcoin miner to mine to earn Bitcoin. And it's like, well, you don't. However, like, what's our goal here? Is it where your school of thought comes from? And it's like, okay, I want to decentralize the network, and I bleed orange, and I 100% am behind this, or is it just I want to accumulate Bitcoin because I saw it on the news and I want to diversify type of deal? And so, Bitcoin mining for home miners is very difficult. One, because of electric rates, like they just go up more and more within the U.S., and two, buying a miner, just one miner, people instantly think like, okay, I'm going to buy a Bitcoin miner and then I'll be rich. And it's like, man, how many of those numbers do you got? But how many Bitcoin miners can we buy? And so I think the challenge is for me is home Bitcoin mining on a pool mining is becoming harder and harder for people. Just because I talk with people every day about like, hey, I'm stepping into Bitcoin mining, I'm stepping into it, and I want it to be profitable. You know, how much is it? How much capital do I need to make $20 a day in Bitcoin? It's like, oh, let's talk about this one. So that's really the world that I come from. So I think I'll go back to it's become just very industrialized and very much out of reach for a lot of home miners.
I agree with everything that you're saying. Looking into the future, with these new techniques such as heat reuse and other business
Mhm.
strategies, do you see that dynamic changing?
I see the dynamic changing from the mindset of stepping away from the profit side of things. So like I see Bitcoin mining growing even more amongst commercial spaces or residential spaces on an alternative source for heat. I mean, absolutely, 100%. I see that getting repurposed more and more. I think especially with where the world we're in now, where you could resell this cool gadget and feature in order to add this into certain heaters here and there and be able to go ahead and do that. And so you can say, oh, well, I could sell you this heater and you're in Bitcoin at the same time. Great. The hash rate, I don't think is going to be very high, just
Mhm.
because as we talked about. But I think it's still going to be able to provide that heat that we're talking about. It could be several terahash. I mean, there's lots of really good units out there. I'd say anything under 100 terahash, I think is obtainable for these types of repurposing. But I think unfortunately, so many people step into this space chasing profitability.
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part is like instead having your mindset, which I can agree with there of like, hey, I just want to stack this forever. Like, hey, you want to buy this heating furnace and unit and oh, it comes with a built-in Bitcoin miner. It's all built in with it. And oh, is it going to make me a ton of money? No, but you're going to accumulate Bitcoin over the next 20 years of that furnace. Great, sounds good. I think it's going to be a lot of byproduct.
Yeah, going back to what you said, I mean, time preference is major. A
Mhm,
lot of people, a lot of Bitcoiners come into Bitcoin through the number go up side of things, wanting to make
mhm,
more money and then staying for the revolution. People
mhm,
like you've come in through the technology side of it, number go up, I want to make profits, and then you stay for the revolution.
mhm,
What a lot of people have to figure out for themselves, I'm not by any means telling people how they should or should not live their own lives. That's up to them. I've got to worry about myself. But like you have to figure out what your time preference is. If
mhm.
you're trying to get rich quick, you want to be rich tomorrow, then I'll be the first one to tell you that Bitcoin mining is not for you. For me, it's like my perspective is like I want to not be poor 30 years from now. Like that's
Yeah,
that's my whole goal is
yeah.
like I want to retire eventually and I'd like to be able to retire comfortably. So like Bitcoin is my only shot at redemption in that regard. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. And
Yeah.
that pencils out differently for every person.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say what I run into a lot based off of timeline too, is man, people are just a lot of people come into the space very uneducated, and that's fine. I get it, 100%. Like, but I think one of the big things there is people step into the space not realizing of like what's it actually going to take, like to make like as I brought back that question, like $20 a day. $20 a day is a lot. Like $20 a day in Bitcoin is a lot. That's you could look at that. That might be two S 21 XPs. So now you're spending, just under $20,000. And people hear that and they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh, yeah, by the way, you have to pay for power and your power is probably $250 a month. So now you got $500 a month. And so I think that's where people don't realize like they just lead with profit. They lead with that
Mm.
number versus as you had said in your school of thought is like, hey, just set it, run it when you can, when it makes sense, stack the sats, and then come out the tail end of it, which I think is a better avenue to go, because people want to participate in Bitcoin mining, which I think is great. And there's been a lot over the last year, even that has introduced a lot of individuals that aren't traditionally into Bitcoin mining into just Bitcoin itself, whether it's ETFs, whether it's alternative, investment opportunities with Bitcoin. But which I love it. I love to see it 100%, but there's just a lot of uneducated individuals chasing the profit chain.
Yeah, and with these uneducated individuals, I mean, we were all there at one point, you
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
Like you have to be willing to like do that 10,000 hours of research just to figure it out. And I'll be honest, a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people,
Mhm,
they just want to like, how can I make that easy dollar? And that's why we're
mhm.
in the fiat system that we're in today, because of so many individuals who just want to make an easy profit. So I get it. One of my favorite things about the heat reuse industry is let's take Bitcoin completely out of it. Let's take Bitcoin out of the
Mhm,
scenario entirely. If I hand you a heater and I say this is going to heat your home and cost you $0 to produce that heat, what are you
mhm.
going to say? And most of the
Mhm.
time, people will say, well, like, how can I install this in my house? And I don't even have to
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
you that
yeah.
it mines Bitcoin. You just like, oh, maybe it's not going to pay you. Maybe it's not, making money for you,
Mhm,
but you're no longer paying for the heat. You're getting
mhm,
that on the back end. And so I think that's a really interesting way to incept the idea of Bitcoin into the hearts and minds of individuals who aren't necessarily like autistic and wanting to learn about this new technology and this new form of money. Because, you install this in someone's house and it, heats their home for a little bit. They've reduced their electricity costs because they're no longer paying for that bill. And then they're going, well, like, how does it do that? And you tell them, oh, it
mhm.
mines Bitcoin. And they're like, what is Bitcoin? And then you tell them
Yep,
what it is, and
yep,
they're like, well, I see it working, so it's
yep,
obviously not a Ponzi scheme. Like I see it working. So
yep.
how can I get involved? And so I think it's an interesting way to just like incept them down the rabbit hole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the avenue we see in the future as we see Bitcoin miners installed in all different types of appliances or home furnaces or whatever it may be. I think that's going to be something that we see in the future, whether it's a small 100 watt, 1 terahash model or 6 terahash model, or it's something, more to the extreme. I mean, that's the difference is like, you know, you had talked about before, I think it's the Canaan Avalon Nano 3, maybe you had mentioned a Nano 3S, but I mean, that unit produces heat. It uses 140 watts, the Nano 3S, and it's only 6 terahash. Okay, great. You're participating in mining. It's making very, very little, but it's producing that heat. And that's not something that someone's going to blink at their electric bill at. Like 140 watts, that's like a crazy light bulb. Like,
Yeah.
that's the nice thing. It doesn't need to be 120 terahash S19K Pro setup. But I think that's going to become more and more common. More and more people are going to want to be a part of that. And I think a lot of other tech companies are going to partner with a lot of traditional companies that are part of these appliance installs to do that, which I'm all for. I think it's a great avenue to go.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many conversations with heat punks talking about, the heat reuse industry and where it's
Hmm.
headed. And I mean, that's another conversation in and of itself. It just, the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper if you want to head down there. But we don't have that much time today. Hobbyist. We're running up on time, and I did not get to answer or ask all of my questions, which is cool. I like these episodes when I like run out of time and not run out of questions. So I guess I'll do the end of our, the portion of our interview or conversation here today, and then I do have some things to deal with at the end. But the last, major question I want to ask you is, because you're, I would say heavily involved in other cryptos, do you see any other crypto projects that could be viable solutions to the real world problems?
Yeah, so there's a lot of like there are so many crypto projects out there that tout like they're going to change the world, right? Like that is what I hear all the time of like, oh, this crypto project's going to do this or do this, and I am I've seen so many projects fail to do that, or don't actually do that, and so it's very hard to believe that's out there. A lot of cryptos chase the fastest blockchain, or fastest transactions, and which is great. We need that, right? We need that as a payment method. Granted, we do have the Bitcoin Lightning Network for sure,
I was going to
but
say,
there
do
is,
we do we need
yeah.
that?
But there's a lot out there, a lot of ones out there that is anybody changing the world in my eyes at this point? No. I mean, if we look at it, Bitcoin has done that, without a doubt, and I can 100% agree with you there on like how is it changing the world? Is it bringing this massive new technology? Yeah, in the form of a currency, because we failed from the money system side of the world with traditional fiat. So I mean, when I look at it, that's what I see. Right? Like, yes, it does fantastic from replacing transactional, blockchain out there and such. But yeah, I mean, that's the hard part. Is like for me, when I look at altcoins, I don't fall in love with any of them. I'm just chasing profit. Like, don't blame me. I'm chasing profit, and then I'm putting it either into Bitcoin or I'm putting it into fiat to pay electric bills. And that should say something definitely about Bitcoin for sure.
It says quite a bit, actually. I mean, there's nothing wrong with chasing profits,
Hmm.
especially if you can be honest about what you're doing, what your motives are.
Hmm.
I think that's the key. What I see too often is somebody who's like, I believe in Bitcoin, and I'm idealistic about it, and I'm not profit driven. But I'm gonna go
Hmm.
mine Doge because it's cheaper, and I'm gonna swap to Bitcoin. It's like, okay, you've got two diametrically opposed thoughts here, you
Yep.
know. So I can 100% respect your position. I'm not going to follow you. I'm not going to do what you do because it's just not what
Sure.
I want. And
Yeah.
it's important to the world. We need
Hmm.
people who are willing to sit down, have two different opposing views, and have a conversation about their opposing views. And I think that that is really what we did here today. So, as we're ending up, I do a couple things on the podcast. I always ask someone, a very important question to me the first time that they come on. So I'll end with that. But for you, I'd like to just get, for the audience who,
Hmm.
maybe they're getting into crypto mining, they're getting into Bitcoin mining, they're just starting out, they're trying to figure out, what path should they travel down? What piece of advice do you have for them, or a couple pieces of advice do you have for them?
Yeah, definitely it is not it's not a sprint. People want to rush into learning how to Bitcoin mine or to crypto mine, and definitely take your time. I always tell people, like, I took 6 months before I even started my YouTube channel and even got and built my first rig, just watching videos and learning about crypto mining. And that's going to be tough for a lot of people because we want it today. That's the world that we live in. We want everything instantly. The hard part is I've had too many phone calls with people where they bought miners, not realizing, one, the massive amount of power that they use, two, how loud they are, or three, they can't even hook it up at home because it's a three-phase miner versus single-phase miner. And so I would recommend highly just doing your homework. Everything's on YouTube nowadays anyway. I mean, you can Google it, but you're going to end up on YouTube anyway. So just do your homework, learn a little bit more. I mean, I have a section in my Discord because of this question that literally it is beginners start here. And it is a section of my Discord of like useful videos. I have several in there that is like every once in a while I do a no BS question and answer video on my channel, and it's an hour long. I never do hour long videos, but it's an hour long of community submitted questions. And I am just straightforward. Like, you ask the question, here is the answer, and here's why. And I recommend a lot of these beginners come in because it's a variety of different Q&A, but it's educating them on the realities of like, what is this? How does this work? Would I do this? Why would I not do this? All that types of stuff. So I would just say anyone stepping into the space, educate yourself first before you buy your first miner.
That's great advice, actually, because I would agree with that. And I've said this before, to my audience, but I'll say it to you. When I first got into investing and trying to like make my money work for me, I found one piece of advice, and that advice was never invest in something that you don't understand. And there's only
Mm,
one way to understand something, and that is to like put the time in to actually learn it. So if you're going to be a Bitcoin miner, if you're going to be a crypto miner, you should at least understand how energy is utilized, how much the machines make noise, how much heat they produce, like
mhm.
what's the real cost, not the financial burden, but the actual burden of running these machines. So that's very important.
Yeah.
So last thing, I want to give you a little opportunity to shill anything that you have. Do you have any new videos coming up, anything that you want my audience to look into, any
Sure.
products you're trying to sell? Just take a couple minutes, shill whatever you want to shill.
Sure. So I'll just direct people over to my website, thehobbyistminer.io. Over there, you will find a variety of different things. Not only can you get some really cool hobbyist miner merch if that's your world, but also that's where you can find my YouTube channel. You can find links to my Discord. You can email me. You can reach out to me on Telegram. If you're interested, you can book time with me. I do consulting time one-on-one. A lot of people reach out to me before they want to spend $10,000. They'll spend $100 to talk to me. and book that time out over there as well. You could visit the YouTube channel right through there. Check me out on Twitter. And then actually next week, we're actually launching with me and a few guys on my team an article section of that website. So there'll be an article coming out regarding crypto mining every single week. We already have 6 front loaded on there. A lot of them are strategy and tips, that can value people within the space when it has to do with mining or hardware and such. So definitely recommend go check it out. TheHobbyistMiner.io.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure that that is in the description of the show, as well as your X channel, so people can find you. And the very
Perfect.
last thing, hobbyist, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Mm. Uh, I would say if I had to sum it up very, very quickly, I would say lack of governmental control is where I put Bitcoin. For me, I constantly see just all the wrongdoing within our traditional finance, within our current government when it comes down to spending. And that is not the case here with Bitcoin. And that's what I love about it the most is that it is a globalized currency that is not controlled or manipulated by anyone.
Beautiful. Well, shoot. I guess that's a good place to end it. I just want to say thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for, speaking to my audience. To the audience, please, if you liked this episode, like it, comment on it, share it out with your friends and family. We want to, spread the orange signal, as Simply Bitcoin always says. And I appreciate you guys taking the time and watching this whole episode. So we will see you next time on the Build a Mind podcast. Peace out, everybody. I guess I should hit end.